Welcome, everybody, to the Social Security Essentials Workshop. My name is Ron Lang with Atlas Wealth Management, and I am a co-presenter today with Jeff Kickel from Sure Horizon Retirement. I am based in Arizona and have an office in the Philadelphia area. Jeff is based in Austin, Texas. So what we're going to do today for the next 45 minutes is go through a lot of the key information about Social Security to hopefully put some meat on the bones and answer some questions about Social Security and maximizing your benefits. So if you have any questions, please put it into the chat box, and I'm going to turn it over to Jeff right now.
Thanks, Ron. I appreciate it. I'm super excited to be here for everybody. This is actually a new presentation that I'm doing in conjunction with a book that I just finished called Social Security Essentials. The Social Security Essentials book really covers a lot of what we're going to talk about today, but it's going to go more in depth. And if you'll hang around to the end of the presentation, I will send you, or you'll be able to access a link that will allow you to get a free copy of the book. I'll give you a PDF copy, as well as I will send you a actual printed copy in the mail. It just takes a little bit, takes about a week or so. So I want you to have the information as quickly as possible. Part of that book also has a resource page that's part of my website. So there's a whole bunch of little worksheets and things like that I put together for you that'll help you as you're going through this process. What I will tell you about Social Security is it is the most and least complicated thing in the world when it comes to pensions. It is a program that a lot of people, I think, discount. They think, okay, maybe Social Security will be there and maybe everything is going to, it'll be fine in the long run. It's not really going to be that big of a thing. What I will tell you is Social Security is a major portion of your overall retirement plan, and you need to treat it as such. You will hear me talk a little bit about the Social Security programs today. What we're going to cover is really how to maximize your benefits. We're going to talk about the essentials. We're just going to talk about the basics of how the plan works. We're going to give you some of the terminology that you need to understand, because they're going to throw a whole bunch of acronyms at you, and you really need to understand what those words. We're going to walk you through that today. You're going to be able to come out of this with a much clearer understanding of what these terms mean. We're not going to get into the calculations of some of the things like primary insurance amount. That's actually in the book, where I actually walk you through step by step how to do that. I'll walk you through how to do it in the book, but the good part is the government actually does a pretty good job and has a wonderful website that you can go to and just get the number and not have to calculate it. But for those of you that like to know the numbers, I'll show you how to do it in the book. Benefits and options. So the different benefits and options. And then we're going to get into strategies. We're going to talk about filing strategies, whether you're an individual, whether you're divorced, whether you are a married couple and are trying to figure out when should we do all that. Then we'll get into next steps. And one of the things that you will get out of this is I have a website that I set up that you can actually go into and put all your information into, and when you intend to retire and take Social Security, and it will tell you, okay, this is an optimal version, or maybe there's a little bit of a tweak to it. So it'll allow you to do that, and you can print a report out for yourself. So let's get started with the wonderful world of Social Security. So let's start with the basics here of eligibility. So to get the maximum amount of Social Security that you can get based on your income, you have to have 40 quarters of wages. So basically, think of it as this way. You have to have worked for at least 10 years to get the maximum, and we're subject to paying Social Security payroll taxes. And those don't have to be consecutive. So let's give you an example. Maybe you're a stay-at-home mom and you worked for 5 years, and then you took some time off to raise kids and then went back to work later, but you were able to work a full 10 years during that time period. You would hit your 40 quarters. In today's world, that could have been the husband in the family doing that as well. Or maybe one of you took off some time and went to do volunteer work or something like that where you didn't get paid and were not subject to Social Security. So 40 quarters is your golden ticket to get in. Now, the benefits that you receive are calculated based on the average of your 35 highest years of earnings, which for most of us, that's at the end of our career. So figure the last 35 years of your career, that's really going to be where your earnings are going to be based off of. Now, here's the funny part, and this is my little rant that we'll talk about today. So this is based, the trust fund for Social Security is based on the full faith and credit of the US government. And so by 2035, and this is where I have a major issue with a lot of the political stuff that goes on in this world, because by 2035, payroll taxes collected will pay approximately 80% of the benefits owed. Now, that's saying this is a little trick that the government plays on you and politicians play on you, making you think, oh, after 2035, I'm only going to get 80%. No, go to the first part of that. Trust funds assets are invested in special issue U.S. government bonds backed by the full faith and credit of the U.S. government. What does the government get to do? The government gets to print money. That's what they have the ability to do. So their ability to keep paying claims to you is unlimited. It's just that payroll taxes collected are not going to cover the full amount of benefits owed at that time. So it doesn't mean that everybody's not going to get Social Security or at some point it's going to drop off. It means that the government's going to have to fix the problem, and politicians will actually have to get some guts and fix the problem, which they'll end up doing. They've done it multiple times throughout that time period. So what I would do is encourage your lawmakers to get off their duffs and get things going a little sooner than waiting until 2035. And then it's panic city and they're trying to figure out what they need to do. So rant over. That's the sustainability of it. It's going to be there. If you're over 60 today, you have no worries about anything at all. You just really need to realize how this fits into your overall mix. So let's get into some terminology. And this is where it gets really complicated from your view a lot of times. It's really not as complicated as you might think, but you need to understand a couple of terms. The first is full retirement age. So this is where Social Security, this is what the system is based on. The system was created in 1934. At that time, the retirement age was age 65. The first beneficiary of it ever ended up living another 30 years beyond. However, the average age of an American back in that time period in the mid 30s was about 61, 62. So this was a pretty good bet in the government's view, because they viewed it as, okay, there's not a whole lot. We're just going to take care of the people that get really old, which really old was 65. So for those of us that are more towards the 65 than 25, it's not so old. 65 is where you're just getting your stride in this world. So what's happened over the years, though, as the government's realized people are getting a little older longer, so they're living longer, and we need to make some adjustments. And so throughout its life span, there's been adjustments made to the full retirement age. The last time this was done was somewhere in the early 2000s period, where they adjusted to the current schedule that you see on the left hand of the screen. So if you were born between 1943 and 1954, your full retirement age is 66. After that, so 55, 56, 57, 58, and 59, you get a little bit of an adjustment up. For 55 or 1955, it's 66 and 2 months. For 59, it's 66 and 10 months. After 1960, so if you were born after 1960, for all of us probably on this call, our full retirement age is age 67. So that's where it is today. What do I think is probably going to happen as far as an adjustment? the least painful adjustment for things to get fixed within Social Security is for them to do what they did last time and say, you know what, we're going to move the age of full retirement age maybe up to 6, because we are all living longer, significantly longer than we were at the beginning of it. The other term that you need to understand is primary insurance amount. So what the primary insurance amount is, that's the actual amount of that you receive at full retirement age. Now, that's based on your earnings plus the number of years you worked plus your age. That gets you to your primary insurance amount. Now, if you think that would be that easy and just go this plus this equals PIA, not so much. Once again, in the book, I take you through that whole process of figuring out what PIA is, or you just go to the Social Security website and they'll tell you what your primary insurance amount is. But that's what it's based on. Your earnings over that 35-year history of your highest earning years, the total number of years you've worked, and then your age at the time that you take your Social Security payments. If you collect prior to your full retirement age, so you decide when I hit 62, I'm taking Social Security, you're going to have a reduced benefit. So there is some value to waiting beyond that time period. And I realize this thing got jacked over here a little bit. All the stuff is over at one side, but I'm going to walk you through this. So let's say you decided to take your Social Security at age 62. You're going to get a reduced benefit based on that. And how it works is it roughly works out to be about 7.6% per year that you get a reduction in your benefits if you take it prior to. So if my primary insurance amount is $2,000 at age 67, if I were to take it at 62, then I'm going to get $1,400 forever. So that stops. I don't earn anymore. I can't take it for a few years and then refile at 67 and get $2,000. Once you make the decision, you've made the decision at that point, and there's no going back. Now, the opposite is true. What if you decided, I'm going to expand and I'm going to keep working a few years longer, or I'm just going to delay. I might not work, but I'm going to delay my Social Security, taking my Social Security and filing until I'm age 70. In our example, once again, if you take it beyond age 67 at your full retirement age, then you're going to get about 7.6% more per year at age 70 if you wait until age 70. So now in our example, my $2,000 PIA is now $2,480 for the rest of my life. After age 70, if you decide I'm going to wait longer, there is no reason to, because you do not earn anything else beyond age 70. So that's what you need to understand. And so everybody's sitting here going, why wouldn't I just wait until age 70? It's not that simple, because a lot of it depends on the structure of your assets, how much assets you have. Do you have the ability to cover the amount of Social Security? We're going to go through some scenarios with that. Once again, inside the Social Security Essentials book, I go through a ton of scenarios with different, some of them are things I made up, some of them are actual clients, and walking you through different filing strategies and things like that. But for now, as long as you understand the fact that if you take it before, you're going to get a reduced benefit. If you take it after full retirement age, you're going to make a little bit more money. Now, longevity. A lot of people, and I'm probably Ron can tell you this as well, we work with a lot of people that might have had a parent die early. A lot of people just think they're going to die earlier than they really actually will. So if you look back to 1960, which is not too long ago, the average life expectancy for men was 66. The average life expectancy for women was 73. Fast forward to 2023, that now goes to 84 and 87. So it's very likely that if you are 65 today, you could easily spend an additional 20 years out into retirement. So you need to be aware of that. And that becomes a part of your planning, because let's say it's you and a spouse, and maybe your spouse didn't make as much money during their career, and they're using what's called a spousal benefit, which we'll go over. Upon your death, let's assume you're older and you're gone. Upon your death, they have the option of keeping their existing payment or upgrading to yours if it was more. So if there's enough of an age difference between you and a wage gap, then it may make sense to wait until age 70, at least for the higher wage earner and maybe the older of the two partners in those cases. But the reality is you're going to be around probably a lot longer than you think. So let's talk about in 2023, over 63 million Americans per month are receiving Social Security benefits. That's over $1 trillion in benefit payments during that year. So we talked about delaying benefits, but what's everybody else doing? That's what I always hear. What are your other clients doing? What are other people doing? So this will show you how it's worked out right now based on statistics from Social Security Administration. So about 36% of men, 38% of women are taking their benefits between ages 62 and 64. What I will tell you is there's a lot of folks that go into this with absolutely no planning, and they don't really understand how this is going to affect them over the long run. I think a lot of people, I would venture to say this is probably a lot of people who didn't really do any planning. They hated their jobs and they couldn't wait to get out as fast as possible. And they didn't really take into account that they were losing that 8% or 7.6% prior to full retirement age. 55% of men, 52% of women are taking benefits roughly between the ages of 65 and 69. And really only about 9% of men and 10% of women are taking benefits at age 70 plus, or at age 70. There's no reason for the plus. So that should give you some idea of where everybody's falling at. I'm not always a big advocate. I know our software will tell you, well, wait until age 70. Most people don't wait until age 70. Most of them, are at least over half, are doing it between age 65 and 69. Highly recommend that you get as close to full retirement age as possible, because remember that this is the one benefit that you receive, whether it's you have pensions or annuities or anything else that's a guaranteed payment like this. The one thing about Social Security is it's adjusted for cost of living, which when we have low inflation, people go, I didn't get that much. But in the year where we had 9% inflation a few years back, everybody got a 9% COLA that year. So it's a nice benefit to have. And the higher the payment, the closer to full retirement age that you are, that means you're getting that cost of living adjustment on that bigger check. So then people will say, what I want to do, I hate my job. I don't like doing what I'm doing. I just have got to get out. So age 62, I want to take it, or I want to get out before my full retirement age. Here's what you need to understand. The government realizes that, and they're saying, you're not going to get a free ride on this. If you decide to retire prior to full retirement age and then continue to work, doing another job, maybe you're doing a part-time job, you have a limit of making $22,320, and this is for year 2024. If you go over that $22,320, so every $2 you make, you have $1 of your Social Security payments withheld. So I make $2 and the government says, we're going to send you $1 less of Social Security payment. And that goes until you stop working, or until you keep it below that $22,320. Now, in the year that you turned your full retirement age, so this is, let's say my full retirement age is 67. I decide January 1st of the year I turned 67, I'm done. My birthday is not until December 7th. So I've got all that year until December. I've got the ability to make $59,520 during that year. If I go over that amount, every $3 I make, I'm going to lose $1, or it's going to be withheld until the month that I reach full retirement age. And then the government's going to come back in and pound that back into me. So if you are a high income earner in that year, you really don't want to. I'm not a big fan of letting the government withhold money. So you just want to hold off until taking it around your birth date, and that then you're not having to pay that money back, or you're not having to wait to get paid that. After full retirement age, it's anybody's game. So if you're 67 years or age 67 and that's your full retirement age, you can earn billions of dollars and still collect your full paycheck. Then you have provisional income, and this is where it's going to get a little bit weird. This is the current law as it exists today. One of the things that President Trump campaigned on, although he said it and then he not said it for a while, and then he came back and said it and he's not said it, but he's talked about not taxing Social Security benefits. And this is, for me, is a major annoyance, because this income that you receive is, and it annoys me to no end when people say that this is an entitlement program. So Medicare and Social Security are what they call an entitlement program. This is not an entitlement program. I spent 40 quarters at least paying into a system which I was taxed on. So that's not an entitlement. That's money I gave to you because you promised to pay that back to me at some point in time. It's not that it was a freebie that I didn't pay for. Once again, rant over. The way the system is set up currently is that up to a certain amount. So if you look at the chart down there, if you are single, your provisional income, so this is another term you need to understand, provisional income up to $25,000 for individuals, $32,000 for married filers, you do not pay taxes on your Social Security. If you make between $25,000 and $34,000, or $32,000 and $44,000 as a married filer, then up to 50% of your Social Security benefit is taxable. Now, that doesn't mean you pay 50% taxes. It just means 50% of the benefit you receive. So let's say it's $2,000, then $1,000 is subject to income taxes based on where you fall in that range. If you make over $34,000 or $44,000, and this is adjusted gross income, then you pay taxes on up to 85% of your check. Once again, it's just the income taxes you pay of that $2,000. So $1,800 is that's what's taxed, not the rest of the check. Now, how they come up with provisional income, first off, they use your modified adjusted gross income, and then they add to that half of your Social Security benefits to come up with your provisional income. So extremely important that you understand that, and extremely important that if you're leading into, let's say you're 10 years out, you're 57, about a year older than I am right now, you want to start doing some tax planning prior to turning age 67, because you can still at this point do some adjustments to how you've got your money structured. It might be that you start to do some Roth conversions. In the past, I would say if you were within 10 years of retirement, it doesn't make sense. As I started to learn more about Social Security, and when I started to research the book, it made me an aha moment. And I said, you know what? I need to start doing more tax-oriented planning with my clients, because we want to try and pay as least amount of taxes as we possibly can. So maybe it makes sense to do some conversions prior to retirement so we don't have that taxable income. Because when we start to look at what the government adds into provisional income, they add in that 50% of Social Security, benefits income, income from municipal bonds, wages, business income, interest, capital gains, dividends, traditional IRA distributions, and rental income. What they do not include is tax deferred buildup inside of your IRAs, because that's tax deferred, income from Roth IRAs, non-taxable income from life insurance, and HSA distributions when used for qualified medical expenses. So now let's talk a little bit about spousal benefits. So let's assume that you have a married couple, Bob and Mary. Mary, for most of her life, they had kids when they were in their early 20s. Mary stayed home with the kids most of that time period. Once again, not to be sexist, just one way of doing it. You could reverse the names and the same thing could happen. So Mary, in this example, doesn't have her 10 years or 40 quarters and didn't earn a lot of money throughout her life. She may have worked part-time or something like that. So her retirement benefit, or her primary insurance amount, is actually not really big. Whereas her husband, who worked the whole time, may have had a much higher check, may have had a higher PIA during that time period. If the way the rules are set up, there's what's called a spousal benefit, meaning that Mary, in this case, could collect up to 50% of her husband, Bob's, full retirement amount or full retirement age amount or primary insurance amount. So that gives her, if she waits until her full retirement age, then she would get at least 50%. But if she decides, let's say they're about 3 or 4 years apart, and Bob hits his age 66, he files his Social Security, gets 100% of his full primary insurance amount, but Mary's 3 years behind and decides, okay, I want to start collecting Social Security, then she's not going to get 50% of that. She's only going to get 37.9. And that's for life. So once again, when you make that decision, you have to understand you're making that decision for life. If, same thing, if their full retirement age was at 67, then here's the structure as it goes down if Mary decides to file at 62. And 62, I don't know if I said this, 62 is the absolute minimum age you can file for Social Security. So there's really 3 opportunities that you can do. First off is strategies for couples, evaluating when and who should file and at when. In the case of survivor benefits, so if you lose a spouse, when should you file your Social Security in that case? And in the case of divorce, former spousal benefits. So there is the ability for an ex-spouse. So let's say you were married for 40 years, and then right at the time that you're rolling into retirement age, you guys decide to get divorced, and now all of a sudden, boom, I might have not saved as much because my spouse made a lot more money, and maybe the whole settlement of the estate, I don't get as big of a deal, and I'm now going to lose Social Security. The government thought about that and said, no, you were married for 40 years, so you get, as an ex-spouse, you're eligible for a portion of benefits. So first off, for couples, once again, we talked about this of when to file. So let's say we've got Elaine and Aaron here. They're each age 62. They decide to file. Their full retirement age is 67. Their life expectancy is 87 for him. She has got a much longer life expectancy at age 95. So when we look at this, now we're saying, okay, Aaron, if he filed at 62, or they both filed at 62 as a couple, they're going to end up over their lives making about $788,000. If they wait until their full retirement age, then over their life expectancies, they're going to make $881,000. If they held off until 70 for both of them, since they were both the same age, then they're going to get 21% more, and that's $957,000 that they would have in the end. So waiting could increase the benefits for both of them, and it would increase the survivor benefit, assuming Elaine's the one who lives the longer, which we're assuming her life expectancy is 95 in this case. So that would mean that she would have a bigger check if Aaron was the primary breadwinner in the family. Now, opportunities for maximizing benefits. To be eligible for spousal benefits, you have to be married to a spouse for at least 9 months, or a married and be an ex-spouse for at least, they had to have been married for at least 10 years. So let's say you are in your 60s, you've gotten divorced before, you decide, you know what, I'm going to get remarried. For my spouse to be eligible for spousal benefits, they have to be married to me for at least 9 months. This is the what I would say hey, I'm waiting around, I've got somebody that's dying and I'm going to marry them. They have to be alive at least for 9 months at that point for you to receive that. You can receive the highest benefit if eligible for multiple survivor benefits. What that means is you can get the highest of that. Let's say you were an ex-spouse and your former spouse makes a whole lot more money than your current spouse, or made a lot more money than your current spouse. You could choose to file under your former spouse versus your existing spouse in those cases. In the case of, and this is where people get confused and think that if my ex-spouse files under mine, then my current spouse is not going to get as much. No, that they're two totally different things. They're completely separate things. If you're eligible for your own benefit and a survivor benefit, one may be activated early without reducing the other. So let's say you decide to file just under your own without the survivor piece, and you'll see an example of this in a second. Then you can just take yours for a little bit and then file under your survivor benefit after you receive or reach age 67, and that'll give you that bigger survivor benefit, or the bigger spousal benefit in that case. All right, so here's an example. So we've got Bob and Mary again. They're both, full retirement age is 66. Bob's PIA is $2,000. Mary's is $400. So if Mary were to file her full retirement age, so her benefit of $400 at age 66, and she's also eligible for the spousal benefit, then she would get $600 for a maximum of $1,000, which is exactly half of the PIA amount for Bob at his full retirement age. Well, let's say Mary decided, I'm going to file at age 62, I'm going to file my benefit, but I'm going to hold off on filing the spousal until I hit my full retirement age. Then she would get her full $600 and the $300 she was already earning because she took it at 62. So that got her to $900. So this might make sense in some cases for them to do. Let's say she decided to file both at that point. So now she files her personal one and her spousal one at age 62. That's going to reduce her payments for the rest of her life to $720. Because once again, once you start, you can't stop and you can't go back and make adjustments. So that's why you want to plan for that. Now, if she wasn't eligible for a spousal adjustment, let's say she wasn't married for a full 9 months to Bob at the time of his death, then she doesn't get the spousal adjustment at that point, and she's just going to live off of her age 62 personal benefit. Now, former spouses. Let's talk about this for divorced spouses. An ex-spouse may be entitled for up to 50% of the ex-spouse's benefits if they were at least married 10 years, the couple has been divorced for at least 2 years. So the government has figured this out, and you can't just wait until you get up there and go, I'm going to divorce now and I'm going to get the benefit. No, you don't get the benefit. You have to be divorced for at least 2 years, and the ex-spouse is currently unmarried. So this is the key that you need to understand. If you get remarried to somebody, then when you're divorced and you get remarried to somebody, then after 9 months, it reverts to your new spouse, and you need to be aware of that in that case. Now, if a client dies or if a person dies and the ex-spouse they may be eligible for benefits if the ex-spouse was entitled to Social Security or disability insurance at the time of death. So if they met some of these criteria, if they were married for at least 10 years and the ex-spouse has not remarried prior to age 60. So if you remarry before age 60, then the survivor benefits go away for the ex-spouse. So this gets complicated as all get out. It's very smart if you're in this type of situation to sit down with somebody that understands this stuff and they can scenario plan for you with it. Now, some resources that are available to you. I always tell people you need to be really familiar with the SSA.gov website. There's calculators on there. You can make your applications. Used to be up until I would say about 3 years before COVID, you physically had to go to the Social Security office. And if you thought the DMV people were unmotivated, the Social Security people could knock them out of the world. There is no chance that they could ever get fired. They don't care. And it was awful. Prior to COVID, they realized that we have a website. You could probably just apply for all this stuff online. And then especially during COVID, you couldn't go into a Social Security office. And most people today will never even see a Social Security office. There's no reason to go there. Everything is online. You can call them if you've got questions. It's always got the latest information. Documents are on there, updates to Social Security. So if tax rules change or anything like that, or you want to know what's the COLA benefit going to be for this next year, you can go on to Social Security and get all of that information. So let's talk a little bit about where Social Security falls in the continuum of your retirement. And this is a strategy I learned when I was with my former company, the company I started with in this industry. This is a way of putting your retirement together so that you understand it a little bit. And we really want to focus on this left-hand side in this case, which is your essential expenses. That's when you think about it, essentials, food, housing, healthcare, maybe even vehicles in there, insurance, all that type of stuff are essential expenses. And you want to try and cover those essential expenses 100% with predictable sources of income, or what I call guaranteed sources of income. It's the one time we can say guarantee in this industry, because Social Security, although they don't say it's guaranteed, it's basically guaranteed at that point. Pensions pretty much are guaranteed, because if something happens to your pension, there's a backup insurance strategy, or there's a backup insurance that covers pensions. So unless the company just completely bails out and goes away and they close their pension plan, you're pretty well good. And anybody that's taking pensions, you're much better off in that case. And you can also do an income annuity. For a lot of clients, when I do planning with them, when we look at Social Security and their pensions, if they have one, and they're still coming up with a gap, those reliable sources of income, we've got food, clothing, shelter, healthcare. We're covering that with essential sources of income or reliable sources of income. If there's a gap, if you're still coming up short, you can look at adding in an annuity. You can just look at adding an income annuity and just think of it as another Social Security check or another pension if you have a pension, or might be your first pension. You put in a sum of money and an insurance company says, okay, that sum of money, we'll be willing to pay you X amount of dollars for the rest of your life, or a guaranteed period, whatever you choose. And if you decide to live longer than that, if we think you're going to live till age 87 and you're married from before and you're living until age 95, you won the bet. In that case, we have to keep paying you until age 95 at that point. So once you've got that gap covered and you're not worried about, okay, do we have food? Do we have clothing? Do we have shelter? Do we have healthcare? When you're not worried about that anymore, it's a pretty stress-low retirement. You use your other sources of income then, whether it's your mutual funds, stocks, bonds, CDs, IRAs, 401ks, you use those to fund your discretionary expenses, your travel, entertainment, memberships, golf, whatever it is that you enjoy doing, those are your discretionary expenses. So that's how you want to think about where Social Security falls into the mix here. Now, a couple other things that we're going to cover. We're going to blow through this pretty quick because not that many people are going to be in some of these situations. If I decided to, we'll go over this again. Carter, age 61, he's saying, you know what, I'm age 61. I want to go ahead and take my Social Security now. Laura, his wife, is age 66. You know what? I'm going to wait and take this because my life expectancy is, I'm ill now. I don't think I'm going to make it. And my life expectancy is 77. And Laura, my wife, who's age 66, her life expectancy is 76. If I've got a shorter life expectation, it may make more sense for me to file early, or for both of us to file early. So we might both file at age 62, and over that life expectancy of 77 and 76, we'll collect $589,000. If we had waited until age 70, which all the pundits will tell you, oh, just wait until age 70. If I wait until age 70, we're going to only collect about $466,000. So once again, this is an opportunity to have a conversation with your advisor to say, all right, here's the reality of my life. I am not that healthy, and I probably am not going to make it till age 86 or age 84 and 87. In that case, it may make sense to file early. Right. All right. If any of you in the audience are former governmental employees, we're going to go through this fast because not a lot of people are, unless you were a teacher. If you worked for the government in any way, shape, or form, so you work for state government, or you worked for the federal government, or if you were a teacher and your school district or whatever didn't pay into Social Security, you paid into a teacher's retirement program or a federal government pension plan or a municipal government employee or municipal government pension plan. In those cases, you didn't pay into the Social Security system, so you don't get to collect both. Because you didn't pay into it, you might earn some Social Security. So that is, let's say you work jobs outside of your government job. So teachers, you work during the summers and you earn some Social Security credits. What happens is you actually need to calculate, and it's what's called a windfall elimination provision. The government says there's a max that you're going to make between your pension and Social Security. There's a max that you can make. So you can't make both in those cases up to certain amounts. So let's say you were a high-level government official. You're going to have a very large pension, and you have Social Security that you qualified for because you worked in the private sector. That is going to severely cut back, or it might completely eliminate your Social Security. If you were a lower wage earner, so up to, let's call it about $50,000 to $60,000 per year, it might not have any effect. But what you do is you need to calculate it. And here's the calculation for it. Once again, there's always a place to go. And actually on the Social Security Administration's website, which if you go to the resource page that I set up on my website that's out of the Social Security book, there's a link to this windfall elimination provision section of the Social Security site. Go to that, you put in some numbers, and it'll spit out a calculation for you and tell you what it is. There's also the government pension offset, similar in those cases, and it really affects spousal and survivor benefits. So if I was the government employee and I have a pension and I had the ability to collect Social Security, then my spouse might not, you still have to figure this government pension offset, because my spouse might not get as much of the spousal benefit or survivor benefit. Okay, last thing in here is SSDI. So if you are prior to full retirement age and you end up becoming disabled, so that's typically people who can't work because they have some kind of medical condition that's expected to last 1 year or is expected to result in death, you can qualify for SSDI. Now, I will tell you, it is a bear to get through that process because it is a governmental program once again, and they are very strict on people that qualify for this. I will give you an example. It took a year and a half for my nephew, who is paralyzed from the chest down. So he really, especially for really the first 3 years after his accident, there was no chance on earth that he could work because he had his spine caged and everything else. He was learning to live life again, and he couldn't work. And it took us 18 months before he qualified for SDI. So it is difficult. It depends on where you are. Most of the folks on this, I'm assuming, are over age 31. But if you're younger than those, you have to work a certain number of years to qualify for SDI. I'm going to just blow through this because most people aren't going to qualify for this. But typically what happens is there's a trial work period, meaning that, let's say you had a major back injury and your job requires you to sit for periods of time and you just can't do that. That trial work period says we'll pay you, but you've got to try to work. And if you aren't able to, then there's that next phase of the qualification at that point. A lot of times I hear, I have SSDI. What happens when I reach full retirement age? So once you're at FRA, your payment will switch from an SSDI benefit to an SSDA old age benefit, or retirement benefit. The original system where this old age comes from, Social Security at the very beginning was called the Old Age Security and Disability Income Plan, OSDI. In the 1960s, it was changed to Social Security mainly because people didn't like the old age part of it. The switch from an SSDI benefit to a retirement benefit happens automatically. You don't have to do anything. It just does it. And once again, at FRA, you're no longer subject to the earnings test. If you're before age 67, you still have that earnings test that you have similar. There are other beneficiaries who can qualify for your benefits. This is the last kind of cleanup piece of it here. Once again, spouse is 62 years or older. A spouse at any age, if the spouse is caring for your child. Very important if you have a younger spouse and you're still caring for let's say you had a child later in life and you're still caring for a child younger than age 16, they can qualify for survivor benefits. Former spouses 62 and older, parents dependent on your client or parents dependent on you at that point. And then unmarried children younger than age 18 or up to 18 or 19 if full-time student, not yet graduated from high school, and age 18 or older or severely disabled with disability that started before age 22. So all of those are extra beneficiaries that could qualify for this. Now, in the case of same-sex marriages, same-sex couples are eligible for Social Security, spousal, and survivor benefits. Couples that live in a state that previously did not recognize same-sex marriages can apply for benefits. So the state, whether the state recognizes it or at all prior to it becoming a national law, it's still a federal program and totally qualified. Non-married spouses may also be eligible for spousal benefits. So once again, this is an opportunity to really work with somebody that understands this. There's also a really outstanding, because I live in Austin and there's a lot of same-sex couples here in Austin that I've worked with. They have an awesome website at ssa.gov, same-sex couples, that is fantastic to learn and understand all the rules because they are slightly different. So next steps. This is what you need to start to think about as we get through the end of this. I'm going to give you access to a site that I have that will allow you to do some fiddling around with the numbers. You can put your information in when you think you want to retire, when you want to take Social Security, and it will tell you, okay, you're good, you're optimized. If it says, okay, it's not quite as optimal as you can actually review that. It'll allow you to print it off, It's my site. So if you have a question on there, you can actually book a time with me and we can tweak the plan, or Ron can tweak the plan with you. And then the other part is next steps are you've got to schedule regular check-ins, especially leading up to making the decision of Social Security. You need to really be having these discussions and make sure that nothing has changed. I give the best example ever. I have a client that has been with me for probably 25 years now. He was a business owner. His business was bought out. He stayed on because his wife actually had a heart transplant. And so he was staying on mainly for insurance purposes. And when his business was sold, he stayed on as a sales guy. Then the people that owned the company decided to make some changes to how they were compensating the salespeople. And he called me and he understood that this was going to mean he was going to make a lot less money. And literally, he called me. I was driving. I stopped by the side of the road, pulled up my laptop, ran a quick calculation for him. And I just basically told him, walk in there and tell him you quit because you're fine. You're going to be good for the rest of your life. And he's been happy as a clam ever since. This is what the site looks like. When should I start Social Security? You click on this little blue button, takes you in there. It's, I think, 20 questions of asking you different questions. And then it takes you to the final screen that says, hey, here's what it is. And here, download your report at that point. You can go to it with my.advisorcontrols.com/Jeff Kickel/SSGE. And there should be a SSGEN with a hashtag right after that. I just noticed that. Or you can just simply take your phone out, scan this QR code, and that will give you access to that site. It will also be in the follow-up email that you get from Ron and myself with your gift. And your gift is, I wrote this book to help people. Certainly, I make money. It's on Amazon. I make money on it, but I probably give more of them away than I sell. And the whole purpose behind writing this book was, it was what I wish I had had prior to my parents retiring. I really didn't know as much about Social Security prior to my parents retiring about 15 years ago. And so I wrote this for my parents. It's dedicated to them because them and my clients, I want you all to have an understanding of this. And this is my gift to you. When you get the email from Ron and myself, it's going to have a couple resource pages, which is that prior page that you saw here. It's also going to have the link to the resource page for Social Security Essentials. And it will have the ability for you to download the PDF in that link. The other part of it is if you want a physical copy, it'll have a spot where you can register for that, and I will send it to you. It'll take a couple weeks to get it to you. So I wanted to make sure you had access to the PDF before that. That said, thank you so much for taking your time today. I appreciate all of you being on the call. I appreciate you learning a little bit about Social Security. And I look forward to hopefully helping you down the road and working with Ron. If it's clients of Ron's, I'm there to help and give you the Social Security side of things. And we are off and running.